The air you breathe is critical to maintaining your health. Triad air purifiers filter out contaminants in the air. Check out the Triad air products at the link below this video. Your purchase helps support the show. Welcome to After Talk from the Dr.Jane Ruby Show. Tonight, I'm excited to have Sasha Latypova here from Team Enigma. Sasha's been making the rounds all over the country. She's a great American and a great patriot. She's done a tremendous amount of work, especially with Catherine Watt, on the legality of everything that's going on. Sasha, welcome to After Talk again.
Hi, Dr. Jane. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you bet, you bet. We had a great session for the Brighteon channel just now, Dr. Jane Ruby's Stat, where we talked about the hoax around the Marburg propaganda, how it's not really a virus. We can kind of review some of that as well as we go through this. After Talk is more casual. Anything that you feel that you wanted to focus on. I do want you to share with the audience how we are under a serious declaration of war that gives the DOD and the HHS a lot of power, including the fact that they have now authorized legally to bring civilians in to be able to give them bioweapons to attack them. It sounds so harsh, and people say, well, my government, a DOD, is not really doing that. Explain to people how that's real and how they are legally right now getting away with that.
Yes, so this has been set up for over a long period of time, and I'm using research by Catherine Watt, who traced all these laws for decades, and how this, she calls it legal cage, was built, because definitely that wasn't done in 2020. In 2020, it was just enabled or deployed. But the beginning of this is in the late 60s, actually, when the U.S. signed up to the chemical and biological warfare prohibitions, international ones. Prior to that, of course, U.S. had a very large bioweapons development program. In fact, Robert Kennedy Jr. mentioned this in one of the interviews, which was very interesting. That remember that whole thing, Operation Paperclip, when the U.S. brought a bunch of Nazis into the U.S. Nazi scientists to work on rockets and all sorts of conventional weapons after the Second World War. Well, in addition to that, there was a Japanese paperclip. They brought a bunch of Japanese scientists to work on biowarfare because Japan had a very large biological and chemical warfare development program, and so U.S. always had a big biowarfare development program. Then they had to sign up to the international laws prohibiting this, but these international laws prohibiting these developments are completely, without any enforcement. So there's no real enforcement because there's no verification possible between offensive and defensive developments in biowarfare. So you can just as easily, set up a university, give them grants, have them work on viruses, work on nucleic acid sequences, design them on the computer, do whatever, and call it medicine or the biomedical research. And nobody can say what exactly they're doing, and so for that reason, there are no verifications or enforcements of these biological warfare development programs anywhere in the world. So many nations engage in it, obviously, and the U.S. is one of the largest ones. But after they officially signed up to those prohibitions, then Pentagon had to do something about their existing active biowarfare development program. Instead of disposing of it as they were supposed to under these prohibitions, they simply moved them into the science field. They relocated all this and moved it from the Department of Defense into the Department of Health and Human Services. Since then, the head of NIH became the highest. Basically, Anthony Fauci has the highest paid government job, more than the president. Why? Because he gets 68% higher pay because he's working on weapons. you know. So since then, NIH budget ballooned, HHS budget ballooned, CDC's budget ballooned into incredible numbers. They were very, relatively speaking, small programs. They became gigantic programs. Why? Because all this, money now, which was previously allocated to these defense programs, went into the so-called health programs. So since about 69, they have reclassified biowarfare essentially into science and medicine. And then after that, a lot of additional laws got put into place to make sure that they can actually deploy them. And most important ones are public health emergency. So public health emergency wasn't a thing before 1983. They did not exist. So somehow US existed for 200 years without any public health emergency being defined as anything that government has to do. While, all those years, there were, big epidemics and outbreaks and mostly waterborne problems, until the sanitation came into place. But there was no idea of a public health emergency. Yet in 83, that idea got developed. Somehow. And that idea of public health emergency being on par legally with war was put into law in 1983.
Do we know who's responsible? Can we trace that to a particular president or government or legislator?
And in 83, this was under Reagan. I am not sure who were the Congress people who were, we can trace that, who were involved in this, and whoever else. But that was under Reagan. And under Reagan, they decided that, public health emergency is equivalent to war. And therefore, the same legal structures need to be brought in place if we declare public health emergency. But there were no criteria, no data, no say parameters by which you would say, well, if we have so many cases of this, and how do you verify it, and what is it? It lacks definition. What is public health emergency?
Right. How convenient. How convenient.
How convenient. And now, of course,
they're public health emergency into a military event. Am I wrong?
Absolutely. So, and again, like, define public health emergency. What is public health emergency? Do we have, now they're pushing the idea of, if we have mental health public health emergency, it's like, what? Everybody's going crazy? How do we define that? How do we define crazy? They're now pushing ideas that, the plant viruses can create public health emergency, or animal virus. So just about anything under the sun can be now put into this category of public health emergency, which means war. So they want continuous state of war in this country. And actually, we have been in the state of war legally declared by President Trump on March 13th, 2020. A public health emergency.
How do we, I'm not trying to zero in or put you on the spot with Trump, because I have a lot of confusing feelings, good ones, and I'm very concerned. But how do you sign something like that and not understand the implications? I know he's got snakes around him, and I'm not specifically talking about him because Reagan did it and all these other presidents, but how do they not have a few good people to say, like you, to say, hey, Mr. President, I looked at the analysis here, and, this is actually a declaration of war. This puts the country technically in a state of war. It gives us all this other money we can tap into. To me, it's like a license to bleed out the country financially on every level, right?
Right. It's licensed to bleed out the country financially, but it's also licensed to kill to all the healthcare settings. And that's more important. Yeah. I don't so much worry about money, but I worry about people's lives more. And so they did both by that declaration.
Well, they figured out that they could use the healthcare system to conduct war on the civilians, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. That was a declaration of war. In fact, Stafford Act has never been used before. They specifically used Stafford Act. And there are different theories about the use of it, and that may have been so that may have been a setup for Trump. But you know what? He has a duty and responsibility. He should have known. He has the status of being in high office. He should have known, and he should have gotten consultation on the legal aspects of it. So, people saying he's not a scientist, he didn't make the vaccines, that's beside the point. As a president, you have the duty to get the consultation on the legal aspects of what you are enacting. And what they've enacted was an act of war. And subsequent to that, Alex Azar issued declarations for deploying at least two types of weapons systems, which is COVID and Marburg. And
Sasha,
so that is big problem.
What do they got a lot of this poison bioweapon into a lot of people. I don't really know the pure numbers worldwide, United States, 2/3, 1/2, whatever it is. They got a lot of it into people. How do you think they're going to, what's your feeling from all the documents you read and everything and all the intel that you get? How do you think they're going to proceed next? Is it just going to be, because they'll get another few million elderly to take their yearly flu shot? Are they just going to kind of go lightly like, hey, yeah, here's your flu shot. Here's this other thing over here. Protect yourself. The gays went running. They bought that BS that it was a sexually transmitted infection. And a lot of them bellied up in the inner cities and, major cities for the monkeypox vaccine and all those. Are they going to try to get pockets of subpopulation like elderly and, whatever, age, sexual orientation to get them to just take it nicely? What do you see?
Well, definitely they're trying to get people to volunteer for this because obviously it's a huge population and they don't have resources to, round everyone up. So they're trying to pick off the easier targets first. Whoever gets brainwashed faster, that's the target. And, obviously but there's also a planning as far as deployment of various toxicities of these shots. So we know for sure that from our previous discussions, and actually this has been recently updated about the variability of the shots by French researcher. So we now know that there are at least 3 different levels of toxic shots. So highly toxic, medium, and low.
How do we know this, Sasha?
Well, so we had a discussion on the variability of the shots with respect to the toxicity of the shot, and this was found in VAERS data analysis and also in the government data from Denmark, not VAERS, but the government adverse event data from Denmark. And now we have several independent analyses on several independent data sets showing that you have a specific small size lots of highly toxic. Then there are larger lots which have medium, like two different levels, medium toxicity and low toxicity, and obviously some like large number of lots that have no apparent adverse events. Which means they appear as if placebo. But the problem is that, people ask, were there placebos? Yeah. We have never found a placebo.
Okay, good. I want to stop there and spend some time because this is a huge issue right now. I get literally hundreds of letters or comments in my social media, hundreds a week. Do you think I got a placebo? I'm trying to educate people. I know what you mean when I say to them, I know what you mean when you ask, did I get a placebo? But you have to understand a placebo is a control arm in a randomized placebo-controlled double-blind study, the gold standard, and that is an intentional non-treatment, non-intervention. What they're referring to is something innocuous, something how do you respond to that? And to the deeper point, were there some intentional vials intentionally that had nothing in it that would hurt somebody so that they could parse it out and not create suspicion? What are your thoughts on this, using that word placebo? I don't like it because it's not technically right.
Correct. People need to understand that placebo doesn't mean saline. Placebo can be, in vaccine studies, then they use other vaccines for placebo. So as I said, we've never found a vial with saline. So while remember in the previous discussions we talked about that you can't make a generalized statement about the vials. because of the inherent variability of how huge variability we have in terms of the side effect profiles. So we're finding all sorts of things in the vials, but we have not found one with saline in it, only saline, So that to me says that it's very unlikely that they actually put out saline vials. What I think they put out, and this is speculative at this point, but this is my current working theory, is that they use this substance that's called hydrogel or DARPA hydrogel. And hydrogels actually are used in medicine quite widely, including, for example, contact lenses. So that would be a solid hydrogel. But when it's just, you can make it anywhere from the solid state, like a contact lens, to something that looks like water, but it still is hydrogel. So it can be anything in between. And so I think what they're doing is they're putting this hydrogel on probably in various forms as well. And into it, then they can formulate all kinds of things. So it's also used to load RNA, for example, specifically because it's protective. It encapsulates it and holds it without degradation, or at least slows down degradation enough so that it can circulate and do whatever they're planning to do with it. They also can load all sorts of materials into it, such as nanoparticles, self-assemblies. That's a huge area of research. They can put metal nanoparticle, metal toxicities. So anything can end up being whatever gets infused into this hydrogel will stay there and be protected. So my working theory is that they use the hydrogel as a vehicle. And that's what people get injected with when they get injected with apparently, benign stuff, maybe in a low concentration. And then there's these smaller lots that they introduce with more toxic ingredients, including very, very toxic, such as plasmid DNAs that Kevin McCurtain found, and mRNA, and all sorts of problems. And those are the ones that cause severe adverse events and deaths.
Now, I've never asked you this, and I'm going to ask you in the after talk, because we always do surprising things, but I really want to know if you have an opinion. You can say you don't have enough information or whatever. Sasha had no advance notice I was going to ask this, but you're very well aware of the white fibrous embalmer clots. You're aware of Mike Adams' analysis. The only person to date that I know of who's ever done an analysis, at least on the Hirschman clots, that's revealed it. He's ruled out many things. And so, without rehashing all that, do you have a working theory on what, since it's not tissue, it's not human tissue, it's not blood, but based on the hydrogel and all this other information you have, do you have a working theory on what and why isn't everybody making it, or what those white clots could be?
Yeah, so I think it is actually hydrogel based. So it's hydrogel infused with something. As I said, it's probably in a smaller group of people that these particularly huge clots develop. But actually recently, Anna Michalcha, I think she's been on your show also, the doctor who works with patients, vaccine injured patients. She published an article showing that she was able to get this hydrogel, separate from a blood. So she took the blood tests from several patients, just a regular collection, blood collection.
Jabbed patients?
Yeah, jabbed patients. She let it sit for, and obviously they're not dead. So they have some symptoms, and they're ill, and she's trying to help them to treat them, but they're not dying. They don't have the severity of this, but they still, after she collected the blood and let it sit for several hours, it separated into a regular blood clot, hydrogel layer, and then plasma. So
interesting.
Hydrogel actually separated out of it.
Now, let's remember for the audiences, I'm very sensitive about this issue of in vivo and in vitro testing. So this was outside of a person's body, which means it's outside of the dynamic processes of the body. It's valuable information because it's a piece of the puzzle. And that's helpful. I've never interviewed her. She's got some other theories that are a little, odd to me about, I don't, but
I don't agree with everyone. Yeah.
exactly. I understand, but at least she did that analysis, and I would say that's a piece of the puzzle we should bring in to the consideration. But the interesting thing is when people are alive, it's interesting to note and wonder what is happening inside the body, and is something they've given them. You described the hydrogel. It sounds like a transporter, so it could bring a lot of different things into the body, right?
Right, and it also can grow. So another property of it, and this is in a lot of literature, is that it grows. And in fact, it was developed. It's being developed by several labs that are highly linked to the Department of Defense. So one of them was remember this infamous Charles Lieber lab in Harvard, the guy who was accused of collaborating with China and prosecuted. I don't know what exactly happened to him, but that was one location where but there are numerous other academic institutions that work on this. Pittsburgh works on these kinds of things. Now another one which is huge is MIT. Robert Langer lab at MIT. They work on all sorts of chemistries like this, specifically hydrogel. Specifically, they advertise it as regenerative. You can grow organs and synthetic organs and tissues out of it because it grows by interacting with oxygen.
What is hydrogel made of, Sasha? What are the components?
It's a chemical. It's a polymer chemistry, and I'm not a chemist by training, but I can read it. So it's a particular polymer chemistry that's used very widely. There are organic sources of it, of the underlying material, but you can also synthesize it chemically, and a lot of it's synthesized chemically. And as I said, I'm more familiar with it on the contact lens side. You can make contact lenses out of it, and that they were traditional hydrogel contact lenses. Many people wear them.
Let me throw something out there that because you mentioned that the hydrogel can create growth or enlarge. I did an interview with Richard Hirschman, the embalmer, for the audience's edification, the original embalmer, where I broke the worldwide story of these white fibrous clots in January of 2022. But subsequently and shortly thereafter, we were always in touch, and I was interviewing him quite frequently. In one of those interviews, and I want to run this by you, he said, I put these samples when I remove them from people's bodies, I put them in baggies, and he put them in different types of like formalin and different types of preservative. I don't know if that was intentional or what, but he was trying to keep track, and he had these things in his lab refrigerator. And he said very often, he'll go back and the samples enlarge. So I said, well, what are we talking about? Are we talking about, maybe up like 10% or something? He said, no, by 2 or 3 times. And I said, oh my God, in a freezer, in preservative, like in formalin, in alcohol, things like that. And he said, I had to go back to my wife and say, is it my imagination or is this, and sure enough, they were not all of them. So like you say, there are different things, different combinations, maybe different, dosages. What are your thoughts on that? You think that's really what he was seeing?
It depends on, first of all, what was in them to begin with. But since they grew, it's very likely they're hydrogel based. So it's hydrogel that attracts other things, maybe out of the body metals, like, Mike Adams found that there were metals. So it probably sucks in, different metals and things from the body. It grows based on interaction with oxygen. So depending on what he put them in afterwards, what kind of solution, how much oxygen chemistry was there, it could grow faster or slower. And in fact, that's how they actually control the rate of growth and shapes that they built out of it in the lab is by changing, oxygenation rates and things like that. So this is highly indicative. Again, I can't say 100% this is what it is, but highly indicative that overall this whole chemistry is based on hydrogel, and the underlying vehicle for these injections is highly likely hydrogel based, probably in various formulations of hydrogel, because as I said, it's very flexible as far as how you can formulate it, almost water, like appearing like water, and then being solid like a contact lens.
Well, it's very interesting because, and not just Hirschman, but I've spoken to and received photos and videos from numerous other embalmers. And the common story is, and you can see it in a lot of the pictures of these white things that people have pulled out and sent to me, especially the Hirschman clots. They always had some connection to a blood clot. Like they weren't. And as Hirschman used to say, it almost looked like they were emanating out of them or growing out of them. And I find it interesting that it's not, I had this gut feeling from what he said that they were dependent for a while to grow out of, and what does blood primarily bring but oxygen, right? And then
exactly. So blood is the carrier of oxygen, and that's why they are growing there, because, as I said, it's oxygenation interaction with oxygen. That's why I like the experiments, even though I don't agree with everyone. In fact, in science, we should not agree. We should have multiple ideas and multiple hypotheses being tested at the same time. So for example, I might not agree with the theory of a person, but I really appreciate when people do very good observational experiments. Yes. So just look at something under microscope or look at something live for a few hours and describe what you're seeing. That's extremely valuable. And people kind of disregard it and jump to a theory. But you need to observe, just like we see, Hirschman has done this, observed and documented it, and Mike Adams did, and somebody else. So Anna Mihalchik grew the same thing out of vials of blood, and
and that's an important piece of the story. I totally agree with you. And what's a shame is that we don't have more people getting together. There for some reason in this movement.
I know, I would like to start teaching people how to disagree productively. In fact, you should disagree. Everyone is crying unity, we need to unite. I'm like, I don't want to unite. I want to have plurality of opinions and ideas and hypotheses that we can all test.
Absolutely right. Very smart. Very smart. Is there anything else that you'd like people to know right now or be concerned about? I want to give you, the last few minutes to, anything you think is really pressing that you want to get out.
Yeah, so it kind of digressed into we went to a different direction, but I think the important thing, I wanted to communicate is this whole Marburg Declaration. When you start seeing fear mongering from the usual sources, CDC, mass media, your doctor, who has been brainwashed about Marburg and vaccinations and things of that nature, just know that Marburg is it's not a virus, it's not a disease. It's something that they call Marburg, but it's a lab accident and it's a weapon system. But the important thing about it doesn't spread. It can't spread. There is no infection with it. Even in the fear-mongering documents that they issue, they admit that there is no transmission, airborne or, any sort of person-to-person transmission other than blood contact, which is very, very limited. So, so that's what I want people to understand. Don't buy into these narratives again. Like, I think you've seen enough, and it's time to start pushing back. But definitely when they start fear-mongering and pushing you to inject yourself or your children, understand that they are trying to force you to self-destroy, because they can't actually attack us all, and they need people voluntarily
to suicide themselves in that way.
And suicide themselves. Yeah, exactly.
So if it's not a virus and it's really a propaganda piece and it's a weapon system or part of a weapon system, then, because some people are saying, hey, Marburg's coming, to take, have stock up on ivermectin or fenbendazole or some other idazole, whatever, to combat it. So what's your thought? I know you're not a medical provider, but what are your thoughts based on the intelligence you have?
I think definitely it's worthwhile to have on hand ivermectin and fenbendazole. Those may be useful medications. I think the most important thing you can do is keep up your immune system by making sure that your vitamin C levels are high, vitamin D, zinc. So those are the workhorses. Obviously, in addition to healthy lifestyle, good diet, exercise outdoors, and try as much as possible not to buy into fear narratives. Turn off your TV. Turn off your TV. Go outside, exercise.
Take a walk.
Take a walk. Make sure you eat good food. Your water is clean, and you maintain your C, D, and zinc levels up. After that, yeah, they may throw things at us, and they may be simulations. So a lot of it is also connected to Hollywood. They can simulate these hemorrhagic fevers, just like they predictively programmed through all kinds of shows and movies and things like that. So they will try to do it with the help of Hollywood, as well as there's maybe some toxins they can spread around. But again, you should prepare to it just as any terrorist activity, because these things don't spread by themselves. They need to be deployed. So the usual precautions, avoid crowded places. Don't go to big events if you're not sure. So just basic precautions, and you should be fine. Be vigilant about the information, and we will publish as much as I'm writing a big article on this right now. When I can push it out, probably in the next few days on my Substack, and we'll try to keep people updated as much as possible as information comes in.
Great. That's good to know. Thank you, Sasha. And again, for people, the first show, 2 segments on Brighteon TV airing tonight, May 22nd. Catch those, but you can also read all of Sasha's work at Substack, right? Your Substack is Due Diligence and Art for the title. Yes. What else should they know about finding you and supporting you?
Right. So yeah, Substack, I appreciate paid subscriptions. For paid subscriptions, all my archive is available. Otherwise, it's 2 months of publications, and I publish very often, pretty much every other day. So there's a lot of material available for free, but also a lot of material and more in-depth coverage for paid subscribers. And I appreciate it. It helps me, because this is more than full-time job for which I get no compensation other than subscribers.
Yeah, and people, I've tried to condition the audience that you have to pay for the truth. You can get it for free if you go to Fox News, but you're getting what Pfizer wants you to hear, right? So anyway,
exactly.
Sasha, thank you for everything you do and you've done, and thanks for always coming on the Dr. Jane Ruby Show so we can get your information out.
Thank you, Dr. Jane.
You bet. Thank you. And that's it for this edition of After Talk. Check it out at rumble.com/Dr. Jane Ruby. And don't forget to go to airwaterhealing.com for all of those anti-shedding air purification and water products. And don't forget to use the promo code RUBY for 10% off and free shipping. See you soon. Thanks to my sponsor, Mike Lindell, and the folks at MyPillow.com. Please don't forget to use the promo code RUBY for free shipping and big discounts. Good night, everyone.